Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Maroon Murad. I'm President of Global Underwriting here at Verisk. It is my pleasure to host today's discussion around the digital transformation journey for commercial lines at the NAMIC seminar. We have a highly esteemed panel that promises to deliver nothing less than an exciting and informative debate on how we should shape our industry's future with intent and a heightened sense of urgency. With us today are Barbara Stacer, AVP, Small Commercial Underwriting at Utica National Insurance Group, Tracy Waller, Product Director at Verisk for Commercial Lines, Praveen Reddy, Chief Operating Officer at Velocity Risk Underwriters, and Chad Nice, Executive Vice President, Protector Plans, a subsidiary of Brown & Brown Insurance. Welcome, everyone, and look forward to chatting with you. The race to zero, as we affectionately call the tech and data analytic revolution in insurance here at Verisk, has really picked up steam over about a decade plus ago, with personal auto leading the way. And it's making its way through other personal lines like home and renters and travel insurance, and has most certainly gained momentum in the small commercial space over the past 3 years. The use of modular low-code technology, the habit of no longer asking questions for which answers can be obtained sub-second through data pre-fill delivered by APIs of microservices, and performing literally at point of quote and point of sale benchmark analytics to help with risk selection, assessment, and pricing are no longer a thing of the future on commercial lines. We at Verisk are helping hundreds of commercial and personal lines clients every day to accelerate profitable growth, enhance their CX, and operational and cost efficiencies. We also see this phenomenon extending to the life and health industry, which is implementing P&C concepts like fraud detection at point of sale, accelerated or algorithmic underwriting, and portfolio optimization modeling to help improve CX again, top and bottom lines, and enhance operational and cost efficiencies. So let's now hear from the experts about their experience in this age of transformation. First, let me ask, when did you start your digital transformation journey, and how far down the path is your organization? Perhaps we could start with Barbara, then go to Praveen, Chad, and then Tracy. So Barbara, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you. We started our transformation about 5 years ago more heavily. That's when we started ramping up what we were looking to do. We started with the automation of some of our current processes and workflows, looking at things like the pre-fill of data, the straight-through processing, increasing our straight-through processing capabilities, our underwriting rules and referrals, and started there with where we could have some immediate impact. We called it kind of that low-hanging fruit. And we've been really working on making sure that we provide the personalized attention that our customers expect. We've sort of begun exiting that first stage of our digital transformation, although I don't think you ever truly exit that stage of finding automation of processes. There's always something coming that you can find a better way to automate or to do better. But we are starting over the last couple of years to take the leap into that next stage of our transformation. So with that, we are looking to optimize for our strategic focus. Our thinking has shifted from how do I catch up to the market to how do I differentiate myself in the market. And we're looking at things around product innovation, our speed to market, and the experience and service for our customers, both our agents and our external customers, our direct insureds. So the transformation is something that will continue to be in progress for us. We continue to look to what's available out there, partner with the right vendors that meet our strategic vision and needs.
Thank you, Barbara. Praveen?
Yeah, good morning again. Thanks, Maroon, for having us. I guess for the way I would characterize is we are an MGA, sort of digitally native MGA in the property insurance sector. We're about 5 to 6 years old company, and we write across personal lines and commercial sector. So I would say for us, out of the gate, we were trying to set the company to be more digitally enabled, if you will. So lack of any legacy burden for us helped us get out of the gate, put some things in place to start that journey, but started in a digitally native setting, if you will. With regards to where we are, I would characterize it as if we think about commercial lines wholly, from a small commercial sector, we are further ahead in our journey, as most of you can imagine, as things, whether it's third-party data or leveraging analytics to price and evaluate risk and underwrite risk. We are further ahead in our journey with our small commercial sector. Within our large commercial sector, which is much more complex and nuanced risk, the ability for us to mine data or pick up data from partners like Verisk, if you will, is not fully advanced, if I could put it that way. That's where we are actively working to then see how do we augment, how do we analyze data from a large commercial perspective to get more further advanced in our digital journey. So net, I would say, certainly small commercial, well ahead of the game, and large commercial, as you can imagine, is picking up steam.
Thank you, Praveen. Chad, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, thank you, Maroon, again, for the opportunity to be a part of this panel. I should just start by saying that the Professional Protector Plan for dentists is a specialty insurance program within Brown & Brown's National Programs Division. And we're really dedicated to the P&C insurance needs of dental offices across the country. We actually offer a professional package policy that includes professional liability, property, and other coverages as needed. We have a long history in this space. I would say that digital innovation in many ways has always kind of been part of our experience. Of course, over the years, that's meant different things based on the availability of technological resources and obviously what our priorities were. I would say that the latest round of innovation really started last year when I stepped into this role. I immediately recognized the opportunity that we had to embark on, I guess, what you could call kind of a renewed digital transformation journey. I think our situation is somewhat unique because most of our systems are homegrown. We actually don't have any off-the-shelf systems, and a lot of our technology is technology that we've developed in-house over the years. And of course, we've tailored those platforms to our business needs. However, when I came aboard, I immediately saw that a lot of our workflows had become outdated. And really to distill it, I mean, the timeline from submit to bind for us was simply just taking way too long. So fundamentally, I would say ease of doing business was a problem for us. Most of what we do is considered small commercial. Obviously, this segment's really ripe for robust digital transformation. And I looked at that transformation as really being the antidote to a lot of our organizational challenges. So honestly, you probably kind of gleaned already, we're still early in this latest round of transformation. We're finalizing a roadmap for where we want to be innovation-wise over the next several years, but we have been successful in rolling out several what I would call digital optimization initiatives over the last several months. We have a long ways to go, but we have a number of projects in queue with various deployment dates over the next year. And my hope is that a year from now, we will have traveled quite a bit further down this path.
Thank you, Chad. And lastly, Tracy, as the partner, as the data analytic and technology partner to all of your customers, how do you also transform? How easy or difficult has it been for you to keep up with the market demands and customers' needs?
Yeah, so I think, here at ISO, we've been focused on digital transformation for some time. And while we have mature solutions, similar to what you said, Barbara, this is definitely a journey that will continue for us as the opportunities, the technology, and capabilities evolve. And our goal here is, of course, to be the ones helping to evolve them. Our role is really to empower the industry in its quest for long-scale digitization. That's our top focus. And that is where we have put so much of our effort. So easy, certainly not, but a lot of fun. It's a really exciting space. And I will say that nearly every carrier whom we speak with includes this digitization journey as part of both their short and long-term goals. I think there's a general recognition in the market that this is a path as opposed to a one and done. And I think we've seen a real acceleration in the market since the beginning of the pandemic. And obviously nobody was quite sure how this would play out a year and change ago. I'm not sure of anything really. And we've certainly seen an uptick, not just in interest, but in the actual implementation of digital solutions here. And I think this has proven true across the market horizon, from small startups to MGAs to mutuals and large carriers. And as this group here has noted, we've seen it especially in the small commercial market, where that race to zero application question is on. And we're seeing a lot more carriers use data and analytics and technology to help scale these generally profitable books with minimal expense, and starting to see this expand into the middle market as well. Praveen, to your point, probably the larger market has opportunities there, but a bit of a journey. And there's certainly a need here to use digitization to help address things like premium leakage, retention risk. And we've really seen a lot of movement in using digitization to help address issues like talent drain. That was one that was very interesting to me, as we see that the market generally really doesn't seem to be focused on reducing underwriting heads, but really on freeing up that talent to focus on the more complex risks and automating as much of that smaller or more straightforward book as possible. And of course, as this group has talked about a little bit, becoming that carrier of choice and helping becoming easier to do business with. And common goal in the industry really seems to be focusing on bringing all of these advances together in a way that maximizes the experience for everybody.
Thank you, Tracy. Data analytics, technology, and a lot of personal energy you bring into to the market. So I think whether you're a digital native, Praveen, as you mentioned, Barbara and Chad, this is a journey with a capital J, where you're moving from keeping up or getting up to speed to leapfrogging, if I may say. It's difficult. It's a journey with a capital J. We don't just flip a switch. It requires a lot of people in the organization at multiple levels. And perhaps we go to here, Praveen first, and then Barbara. From an executive perspective, and getting everybody on board to sign up to this digital journey, which requires investment and time. How were you successful, or how successful were you in getting everybody on board? So maybe, Praveen, you can give us a few thoughts, and then we'll go to Barbara.
Yeah, certainly. As you pointed out, Maroon, I think it is a journey with a capital J, even for someone as brand new as we are. The key things, at least, that work for us from a best practices or in general as to how we approached, hinging on the customer experience and speed to market, right? I think we are named velocity for a reason, and I think as we build our business cases, as we discussed approaching our commercial line sector within those two silos of small and large, we always looked back and said, what is that we want to accomplish from an experience standpoint? What is that we want to accomplish from a speed to market or time to market perspective? In both of those cases, the answer is where we can push digitally, but it's also not a blanket digital transformation. I at least in my experience, if you frame this as a big multi-year, multi-million-dollar initiative, it usually kind of puts in the back burner, if you will. So the way we look at it is take slices of the journey and see which ones have a stronger return on investment, which ones have a stronger experience and time to market gains, if you will, and then approach it that way. To give you guys an example, when pandemic hit last year, we took a use case around inspecting properties, right? I think, as most of you know, the inspections may have been more in-person inspections prior to pandemic, and we looked at it and said, how do we quickly react? And we took the use case and approached both our small and large commercial units to digitize the inspections. And given the nature of the business, again, it's a narrow use case going after very surgically. It worked very well for us in the small commercial sector. And in a large, the proof of concept of pilots did not turn out as we had hoped. So I think it's really, in summary, I think focus on where it makes sense, and then approach it surgically with the right business value. My thoughts there, Maroon.
Thank you, Praveen. And Barbara, what are your thoughts on the topic?
Whenever I'm looking to lead some type of digital transformation within our organization, the first thing that I like to present to my executive leaders to get their buy-in is, what happens if we don't do this? I like to paint the picture of, if we don't do this, we are, we're going to become obsolete in an area. We're going to be uncompetitive. We're not going to provide the ease of doing business that our agents expect. So I'm looking at all of these areas to be able to go to my leaders and say, if we don't do this, this is what's going to happen. And as many of the conversations have gone so far today, and many in the small commercial space, it's highly commoditized. It moves very quickly. It changes very quickly. And sometimes it's not about just being the one carrier of choice. You're hoping to get your spot in that 3 to 5. So that's kind of along the lines of the picture that I try to paint to the leaders. And along with that, getting back to the basics. You mentioned journey with a capital J. Journey mapping is a great exercise to show where this digital transformation initiative fits into the overall strategic goals and vision of our corporate structure and what we're looking to do, how we're looking to go. I like to place what I'm trying to do into that vision to show the overall impact and to show what the benefit will be. And then, of course, the benefit also, how are we going to measure those results? So I like to make sure that that's something that is presented to the leaders, that here's what happens if we don't. Here's how what we want to do fits in, and here's what it could look like in the end for us. Is it going to be increased revenues? Is it going to be increased retention? Is it going to take some functions, as Tracy mentioned, getting that non-productive things off of the underwriter's desk so that they can focus on more production related tasks and things in their day? So all of these things are that holistic view or picture that I try to paint for our executive leaders in order to get that buy-in. And of course, the communication of the business case being very clear, full understanding and transparency of what the initiative is. So all of these things helping paint that picture from beginning to end is what I think has helped with us here at Utica National in getting these initiatives going. And Praveen, you made a great point, and it's something that we've taken a step back as well here in our organization. You throw that multi-million-dollar project on the table and it's 5 years to completion, and everyone says, oh my gosh, we need to think about that. We're going to have to think about funding and resource and all these things. So it does, sometimes get put on the back burner, even if it's something of great importance. So getting back to going and taking off those small chunks, right? And working our way towards those larger initiatives. And, that's something we've been doing this year as well, doing some initiatives where we're releasing something almost quarterly to be able to provide some relief to our agents and some ease of doing business components to our agents every quarter, and building up to something really large, but all of it still fitting into our overall picture and strategy.
Excellent. Thank you. Yes, great comments around communications. I think Praveen said take it a slice at a time. Communications. And I think probably, Barbara, a bit of a scare tactic also. It's, don't ask me how much it's going to cost, but how much would it cost us if we don't do it 5-10 years down the line? I think that was the nuance and the subtle point here. And excellent feedback and comments. Thank you. Now, this next one, perhaps we start with Chad and then go back to Barbara. Legacy tech systems. And Chad, this is very interesting for you, and very interested in hearing your perspectives, since you built in all of the technology in-house and now you're transitioning. Legacy tech systems and implementing new ones, changing the old, are massive undertakings and present massive roadblocks from the cost, getting products to market, the human element that Tracy referred to earlier, the culture change, and so on and so forth. We see firms implementing more of a flexible architecture, simplified technologies that are low code or no code in order to avoid this 5-year wait and $20 million spend, so that they can leave leap into the future quicker. How did your organization approach these types of roadblocks, and how did you
Sure.
start winning, Chad?
Yeah. Well, thank you for the question. Yeah, in many ways, it is the challenge that we grapple with, isn't it? I would say fundamentally, our approach was to first prioritize what our high-level objectives were as it relates to modernizing how we do business. And then we overlaid that with a roadmap for where we want to be at various stages over the next 5 years. And all of that was done with a keen awareness on limitations we have in our current, technology footprint. And so when I talk about high-level objectives, really what I'm referring to is, digital transformation. What does that mean for us? And we kind of concluded on 3 things. Number one, ease of doing business from the perspective of the agent. Automation of internal processes, of course, to gain efficiencies and ROI. And developing and deploying, I guess what I would call like digitalized pricing and risk selection tools. But obviously, we can't do everything at once. Our, current infrastructure simply can't accommodate that. We concluded that our number one priority was ease of doing business from the agent perspective. We were fortunate that we were able to identify areas we could tackle this given, within our current platform to advance these goals. And we can talk more about that later. But I would say that really, really important in all of this is, it's one thing to have a vision, it's one thing to have a plan, but you really have to have the fortitude to see these initiatives to completion. And so I think part of the answer to this is honestly a cultural one. I mean, an organization must really, really want to embrace digital transformation. I think personally, this needs to be the number one priority for any organization if they are going to accomplish their innovation goals in a reasonable timeline. So operationally for us, like what we've done, and I think it's kind of been alluded to already, is we've incrementally scoped out initiatives. I mean, we're essentially siloing projects, dedicating the resources necessary to complete each one. And I would say that having some early wins really helps from a morale standpoint. I mean, it really helps to keep going with future initiatives. And honestly, for me, these initiatives have been my top priorities. I've been intimately involved with making sure we stay on task, even with things like testing to make sure that the outcomes, are the desired outcomes that we were looking for. Whenever IT needs something from us on the business side, I will literally stop everything I'm doing and I will make sure that we respond with whatever it is that they need. But we're doing all of that, but simultaneously keeping in mind the longer term vision, which honestly, it's going to require a whole new system for us. And that's something that we have started thinking about in a 5-year plan. But in the meantime, we're kind of taking more of a benchmarking approach. And that's really been the organizing principle, I would say, for how we've tackled our current legacy system roadblocks.
Thank you, Chad. And Barbara, do you agree with the importance of these tasks, the roadblocks they present, and some of the ways that Chad and his organization have helped solve them?
I do. Like Chad's organization, ease of doing business is top priority for us. So when we're looking at initiatives that we want to take, we've taken a step back to say, we're not letting our current system limitations or legacy infrastructure that we have dictate how we move forward through our digital transformation. We're stepping back from saying, well, our system can't do that, from an IT perspective, to having the business drive the requirements because the business is looking for that overall result at the end. So what we've had to do through part of that process is look to modernize smaller components of our IT infrastructure as we make these changes. So yes, an overhaul of legacy systems is definitely in the future for us. And it is part of our overall roadmap and planning that we have as well. But we can't halt what we're doing today till we get to that point. We're trying to lessen the disruption that we could have by pulling right out of legacy and redoing an entire system. So doing those smaller incremental changes and components to the infrastructure is the approach that we've taken for the time being. So, whether it's moving things to cloud or SaaS, looking for components that will work with our traditional system right now, but also have the capabilities to work with, future systems and technology that we have. I think we're all aware of the InsurTech and the things that are offered out there. It's something that we are actively involved in here at Utica National. So in the back of our mind, we are looking at the constraints that we have today based on our legacy systems, but we're also being very forward thinking in terms of, looking at how we want to do business, again, that end game. So as we continue to look into the future, we do see ourselves moving away from a legacy platform. But in the meantime, we are really working within our constraints to still move forward in our transformation, provide the experiences that our agents expect from us, that our customers expect from us. And, overall, at the end, we will get where we want to be in order to have that ease of doing business, be competitive in the marketplace, and have the technology to support that.
Excellent. Thank you, Barbara. Now I'm going to move to a related but slightly different topic around the speed to market. And I remember, I love the sentence, Chad, reducing the time from submission to bind. We refer to it as shortening the cash cycle for our customers here at Verisk. So here's a question where we maybe start with Praveen, then go to Chad, and then wrap up with Tracy. What product speed to market strategies and implementation techniques using digitization have worked for you? And Praveen, particularly since you work in a couple of customer subsegments, the small commercial side, the more complex ones, both on the personal and commercial line space. Would you like to lead us with a few thoughts on the topic?
Yeah, certainly. Maybe I'll tackle the product side first and then come back around to the technology angle, Maroon. I think if you look at the product side, some of the things that work well, or look at what products we are offering, and then going into the insurance products. In other words, there may be more flexibility, not maybe, there is more flexibility in the non-admitted market versus admitted market. So come up with an approach where if your company or yourself have an ability to go into the non-admitted lines, where you can be much more advanced in your underwriting philosophy, much more advanced in what you can deploy from a technology standpoint, and much more in a place where you can take something to the market, try and see if it works. Obviously, more flexibility in the non-admitted segment. So think about the product lines and see which ones give you the opportunity to be more digitally advanced and pivot into those sectors if you can. Again, not everyone would be able to move into admitted versus non-admitted. So that's a flexibility, a product side that can offer. The other thing that I would suggest is, as you're deploying technology, or as you're looking to improve the processes, approach it from a capital first mentality. Ultimately, you have a risk and there's a capital that's bearing the risk. If you prove the value to the capital of why, kind of going back to Barbara's point about what if scenario, what if you don't do some things, if you can prove to the capital, saying that by deploying this technology or by advancing these processes, here is how we can improve the return for you, the capital provider, whether it's your internal capital from your balance sheets of carrier or an external third-party capital. If you approach it from a capital first, return on capital mentality, you can always prove or enable the technology upfront to drive what you need to do on the digital journey. So those are the two more insurance specific nuances from a product side. Explore non-admitted, think of it from a capital angle. And then technology, what I would say is there are some basics, right? Which is API enabled, the flexibility of what you can do, and the cloud enablement of where you can try fast. Look to partner where you can, or look to build where you can in those areas. And the last point I would make is, I think, leverage your ecosystem. There is a lot of insurtech partners, a lot of partners from established players like Verisk, right? There is certainly an angle where you can, as part of your overall processes, introduce some very surgically advanced tools and advanced technologies that these players are putting in place and then put into your business process. So those are some of the things, Maroon, that I can pass on to the group here.
Great, thank you, Praveen. Great insight. Chad, what are your thoughts on the?
Well, for us, I mean, speed to market, as I've said, really translates into how quickly can we get a bindable quote and policy, ultimately in the hands of our agents and insureds. And that is, as I see it, the key to improving agent experience in our program. But this endeavor, when we looked at it, it's really dependent on a lot of things. And so what we looked at first was our internal underwriting and operations workflow. We commenced a comprehensive review of all of our workflows with our internal management team, and we also had agent participation in this to make sure we got their input, because really ultimately it's their experience that mattered most to us in this exercise. But we analyzed each step of the submit to bind workflow. We analyzed what data points are going in, what data points are going out, and who is responsible for each element of the workflow. And honestly, this process for us is still ongoing. We have solicited the help of other resources within our national programs division to do this, but we felt this was just a critical first step, because ultimately, I think the transformation journey, it's more than just technology. I think it's really an aggregation of people, processes, technology, of course, but guidelines, et cetera. And I think taking a holistic look at everything was essential. So what we've learned so far is we gleaned some things. We realized we needed to separate what I guess you could call the nice to know versus need to know underwriting questions. And then we had to remove or add them into our operating systems. And I would say, surprisingly for us, that meant that we actually added some questions that we didn't have in our system before in order to help streamline, some of the workflow. We also analyzed data points. What data points were critical to underwriting? And we ascertained if they could be obtained through, third parties. And that's, how we ended up partnering with Verisk. And we have a number now of APIs that are bringing us certain property rating and underwriting elements that have been very helpful for us. But I think one of the really big takeaways is we learned that we have very little transparency in our systems around underwriting authority. So if a piece of new business comes to us and it's not doesn't qualify for straight through processing, agents don't necessarily know why, and neither does underwriting. So that's a problem, and we have a project in queue to address that. And lastly, in kind of response to all of these changes that we have in the works, we are also changing our application requirements. But I think that this workflow review process is essential and really foundational to accomplishing speed to market in our program.
Excellent. Thank you, Chad. And one of the first lessons I learned in the business growing up on the underwriting side is don't ask a question that's not going to change your risk selection, your pricing, your attachment point. Just stick to the necessary. Now, Tracy, you do this for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, helping shorten the submit to bind or cash to cash cycle. What advice do you have for us on how can we best and more quickly deploy these transformational solutions to help over on the product side?
Sure. So if I were to kind of zoom out and take that market view, there are a few things that I see consistently helping in speed's market, and it echoes a lot of what this group is saying here. So first and foremost, focusing holistically with ROI top of mind, aiming for quick wins, and that focus on quality. We really want to get to smart speed as opposed to speed for speed's sake. And that's what I've seen be most effective. Holistic solutions can be both innovative and efficient, and particularly useful when a firm is struggling with modernizing on top of legacy systems and really trying to untangle, a system that might have been built literally 30 years ago. And it's the number one challenge that I hear in the market with our client base. Internally for carriers, holistic solutions can enable you to go to market with, a bop in a box, taking advantage of capabilities that will allow you to determine, what's the best market for this appetite, align the product offering based on that market, file, release a digitized interface. And kind of flowing under all of that is that concept of the ease of doing business. And I've seen that type of focus be incredibly successful, particularly when it comes to ROI. We know that agents and other producers in the small to middle market have those same pressures of moving quickly and decreasing that time from submission to bind. And we also know that, while they work with a lot of different carriers, they'll keep going back to the same ones if that experience is easy, right? So underpinning all of these successful initiatives becomes that laser focus on quality, particularly when it comes to data and analytics. We know that no data is better than bad data. Low quality data can have effects that really permeate across an entire book, not the least of which being loss of underwriter trust. And when you're really focused on the return on the investments that you've made, that trust is critical. And analytics are really only as good as the data that they're built upon. So losing that focus on quality can have an impact of actually slowing down speed to market rather than increasing it, or creating issues that need to be dealt with post-implementation after you think most of the hard work is already done. So I guess I'd say, kind of to wrap that up, what I've seen in terms of success is that players in the market who take that long-term view here with that focus on speed and ROI seem to be the most successful long-term.
Smart speed, love it. Thanks, Tracy. A couple of rounds of questions. Maybe we could try to limit the answers to about a minute per person. Is there anything you wish you'd known then that you know now about the transformation journey? And maybe we could start with Praveen, go to Barbara, and then Chad and Tracy.
Yeah, certainly. Real quick, two things for me, if I look back. One is maybe around people and culture side. If you paint an initiative for an underwriting team or a brokerage, if you will, they are willing and they are open. I probably assumed that there is going to be more resistance than what's needed. So I think had I known that there's more openness to trying something new, would have helped me a lot more in terms of getting faster. And the other learning for me is really leveraging the ecosystem. I think there is a lot of folks within the segment that are doing stuff that I wish I had known that, hey, can I deploy this? Can I bring in this ecosystem partner to help with the digital journey? Those two elements would have helped on our front.
Thank you, Praveen. Barbara?
I think for me, it would be, we all expect that there's going to be roadblocks and obstacles when we are working on something, but making sure that you expect them, you anticipate them, that you plan for them, and that you're prepared. We like to think that we do that, but through the conversations we've had today, when we're talking about legacy systems and, obsolete technology and things like that you may be working with, you get to a point where you see that it may or may not work. So always being prepared and planning ahead for that. And I think the other thing is, be aware of scope creep. I think that we go into these initiatives and, we are sold on the happy path and everything looks great. And as you get further down that path, you see that there's other things that you may need to bring into scope to get that true path, or that there's greater things coming out. It's such, an area where things are constantly being developed, and something that came out yesterday may not be the best solution the next day. So keeping your scope in mind, whether it's, something that's directly related to an expense initiative, to the ease of doing business initiative, keep your eye on the prize and stay focused on what started that journey for that digital transformation that you're looking at.
Great. Thank you, Barbara. Chad, what about yourself?
Yeah, I think I would say that I wish we would have started this journey years ago. And I say that because it would have helped with access to internal data that we're wanting now to extrapolate for some future initiatives. And for us, this digital transformation is really all about the data. And of course, that means external data that we can get through third parties, but in some ways, more importantly, our own internal data. And what we're finding is, surprisingly, getting our hands on some of this internal data in a usable format that we want to use to help further digitalize our underwriting is perhaps the biggest challenge that we have right now, even more so than getting access to external data through different vendors. If we had the foresight of capturing and memorializing some of these critical data points over the last few years into our policy admin system, then I think we would obviously have a far easier task today extracting the data. So my advice really for any organization is start thinking about your potential data needs now. because without that data, it's nearly impossible to move forward with innovation. It's imperative to scope out what could be available through third parties, or what might only be available in an application or some submission materials that you have in a PDF format in some document management system, somewhere. And if the only way, the only place where that data exists is in that kind of PDF format, then you have to start thinking pretty hard about how are you going to be able to effectively extrapolate that. So I think that's kind of where we are right now with some of our projects, and that would be the one thing I would offer.
Thank you. And Tracy, as the solution provider to a lot of these problems and challenges and opportunities, what do you know now that you wished you'd known a couple of years ago?
Yeah, so I would say one of the most surprising things for us was just how new of a process this type of digitization journey was to so many of our clients. That was definitely something that surprised me, and kind of the impact of that is that there's a lot of support that's needed there, particularly when it comes on the IT side. There's a lot of questions on, this data is great. I see the value. I understand where I'm going and what we're going to get out of this, but how do I get there, right? Now that I'm bringing all of this in, what do I do to get the best value out of this investment that I've made? And that really prompted us to put together frameworks of best practices. I think that's some of the things that I kind of wish maybe we had in place a little bit earlier after learning. And, it really doesn't matter that personal lines has had digitization for a long time and commercial lines is on its way. It's that level of newness that I thought was really interesting and a bit surprising.
Thank you, Tracy. So we're approaching the end of the session. Let's do a final round, maybe 30 seconds each. Final words of wisdom that you want to leave the audience with. Perhaps we go to Barbara, then Chad, then Praveen, and then Tracy. Barbara, over to you.
I would just say pull the Band-Aid off and start the journey if you haven't already. It's a very exciting journey, and be part of it. Be part of it.
Chad?
Yeah, I think it's one thing to digitalize your underwriting. However, it doesn't do you much good unless you also transform your workflows and you really reform expectations around what your underwriting and operations team is now responsible for in this newly digitalized environment. And I actually come from an underwriting background, so I'm particularly sensitive to this, and I know it can be difficult. For underwriters, they may feel like they're giving up control, to make room for this more digitalized approach. So I think it's important as leaders to be able to explain the whys behind what we are doing and make sure that your underwriting and operations team are, they're guided in what their new accountabilities are going to be. And I think what we've done is we've just, we've made sure that they understand, we want to give them more time to do market-facing activities, and we're directing them on how we, the underwriting expertise that we want them to be using.
Praveen?
Yeah, I would say, just kind of building up on what Barbara said here, push the boundaries, take the industry along with you all in whatever initiative you're doing. Leverage the vendor partners or ecosystem partners, do some joint projects, push the boundaries, particularly in the commercial line sector.
And Tracy?
Sure. So I'd say that no matter where you are on that digital transformation journey, just remember the value in iteration. Insurance is an innovation space right now, and there's going to be constantly evolving capabilities and technologies to take advantage of, and keeping an open mind and an open view there, as well as some strong vision and some grit, I think will really help companies along this journey.
Indeed. But this has been absolutely amazing. I want to thank you. Here's some of the taglines that I'll remember: pull the Band-Aid off, smart speed, submit to bind time, one slice at a time, and leverage the ecosystem. I want to thank Barbara, Chad, Praveen, and Tracy for their insightful comments, for sharing the good, bad, and ugly on their journey with a capital J to transform commercial lines organizations through flexible and modular technology and data analytics. Enjoy the rest of the NAMIC Commercial Lines seminar, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.